We have our Swiss customer, Cameron, has brought his B18 in. The engine was built with a K-cam and he really wanted a slightly higher lift camshaft than that. And certainly our power run resulted in 12.5 seconds 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, which is firmly in the bracket of a K-cam motor that's been well built. And we can, pretty sure we can shave a second off that by fitting the 280 cam. So that's 10% improvement for one camshaft. So let's go and see how you do a camshaft replacement in situ. So the first tasks in this job are to remove the radiator grill and the radiator. Now I've got the engine nice and hot right now, so having done that, I'm going to go straight in, remove the fan blade, take the timing cover off, and hopefully because the engine's hot, I can remove the timing gear very easily. And then we'll progress to taking the cylinder head off, the followers out, and then we can take the camshaft out and replace it. So, we shall now set to. Okay, I'm just going to take the bottom hose off this to drain the coolant. Okay, because this is a B18, pleasingly we have a drain plug at the back of the block here, so I'm just going to open that up, which means that later when we take the cylinder head off, we're not going to have coolant flowing into the engine block, into the engine bores. So that's open, and now I'm going to take the top hose off. Moving swiftly on, whilst we've still got some temperature in the engine, we pop off the fan blade. And now we put the car in gear so we can get the crankshaft pulley off and the handbrake on. There it goes. And then I remove 4 of the sump bolts. So the 2 that go into the timing cover and the 2 either side, just give me a bit more slack. There we go. So that's those loosened. Okay, and now we'll get the bottom 2 bolts out of the timing cover before going back up to the top. And now comes the tricky bit. What you want to do is get your safety razor and just endeavour to pare away the sump gasket from the timing cover. This hopefully will allow you to take it off without damaging that sump gasket. And we don't really care about the timing cover gasket because we're going to replace that anyway. So let's just get a bit of movement in it. There it goes. Okay, let's see how that is. Okay, I've got a bit of movement on this edge. There we go, away comes the timing cover. Okay, now comes the meat of it. Let's slacken off the camshaft nut. There it goes. And now we just have to get that timing gear off. Now we're actually going to destroy this because it's a fibre timing gear in a motorsport engine, which just isn't appropriate. So I don't mind just using pry bars to get that off. Now since we are putting steel timing gears on this, we now have to get the crankshaft gear off as well. So we just gently encourage the collar off, like so. And our natty little tool goes on. That's the two side bolts nicely supported. And now we wind off the timing gear. And there it comes. Whilst we're down here, we're just going to take the timing gasket off. Right, so again using our safety razor, carefully pare away down to the sump gasket. This is coming off nice and cleanly because it's such a fresh engine, which makes life easy, but don't expect that if yours has been if your engine hasn't been rebuilt recently, it will generally be a lot messier task than this. There we go, that's a nice clean surface ready for when we assemble again. Good. We're now going to go back up to the top. So whilst we're down here, some of Some of you may be saying, looking at my bottom hose here and saying, what's that out there? Well, this of course being the early P1800, still has an oil cooler on it, an oil water intercooler. And that is sandwiched between the oil filter and the block back here, and this is the water supply to it, and the return pipe comes up just above the water pump there. So that's why this isn't just a plain bottom hose, it's a three-way bottom hose. Okay, top sides. Before we can remove the camshaft, we've got to take the followers out, and that means really taking the head off. If you've got a standard car, you can really remove the head with the manifolds still attached, but this has a 4-branch manifold, so I'm going to have to detach both manifolds and pull them away before we can lift the head clear. Let's set to and get the head ready to lift off. This engine, being a motorsport unit, has twin valve springs, and on this, if you try fitting the rubbers as this engine builder has, the rubbers sit proud of the valve stem. In other words, you can't really set up the valve gap clearance. So when using twin valve springs, do not fit Volvo's rubbers on top of it. So we're going to get rid of those and throw them away. Okay, everything's clear of the head now, so we can actually take the cylinder head bolts out and remove the head itself. We've taken the heater hose off the back of it, we've taken the two manifolds off, I've taken the oil cooler inlet off here, we've taken the spark plugs out, the alternator adjuster bar has been removed from the front of the head, and of course the water temperature sender has been removed. So we just pop out the cylinder head bolts. The easiest place just to break the gasket seal is to pop a light pry bar between the water pump and the bottom of the cylinder head, and then that just opens up the gasket. And away we go. Okay, we've got some gasket left here that we're going to have to pare away nice and carefully. I'm just going to dry off the oil. And now we set to with our razor blade again. And we throw away the old water pump seals. Okay, it's looking good. And just to make sure we get our favourite ham bastard. That gives us a lovely surface there. Now, because we're putting in a new camshaft, we throw away the old followers. Yep. Right, so we're now ready to turn our attention back to removing the camshaft. So the last part of disassembly is to remove the camshaft end plate and then draw the camshaft out forwards. So we'll go and do that. Now don't use your bare hand to grab hold of the camshaft end because that thread is very likely to cut into the palm of your hand. So always use a rag. And just rotate it and draw it out. Careful, just endeavouring not to knock the bearings too much. Okay, having now taken out the fuel pump, I can now draw the camshaft out easily. Like so. And there it is, one old camshaft to be thrown in the bin. However, before we put it in the bin, we do just have to remove the wood rough key, and if you're using the same end plate, then you also need the ring. So pop it in your vise, take out the wood rough key, allowing you to retain the ring. Okay, so in time-honoured fashion, just as Mr. Haynes told us, fitting is the reversal of removal. Sad to say, he died last year. Not sure when you'll watch this video, but I think it was 2018 that Mr. Haynes died. Anyway, so we have camshaft, Richard Iskandarian's finest, and this being a road car. This camshaft is designed to run with DSUs. So Iski Cams make these camshafts for us. They're not listed on their public website. And we pop a nice bit of assembly grease on the 3 bearing faces there. And in it goes. There it is. Lovely. I'll put aside your assembly grease because you'll be needing that for when the new followers go in. Then we have our nice new steel and alloy timing gear. Now, if you don't redline the car, then just use the standard fibre timing gear. There's no need to go for this. However, if you do routinely redline, and of course, if this was our engine, we would claim a 7,000 RPM redline, so you can happily take it to 7,000 RPM if it's our engine. Then we would always use the alloy timing gear here. They used to say that the steel and steels were noisier than the fibre timing gear. But to be honest, I struggle to hear any difference between a fibre set and this steel and alloy. And then with your timing gear kit, you get a new plate and ring. Now, the way this works is the ring is marginally fatter than the plate. And therefore, when you tighten this all up, the camshaft nut goes on, the camshaft tightens up against this ring and is free to move with a tiny bit of clearance against this, around this plate. So that's how that works. So we pop the ring on, rotate the camshaft such that the wood rough key slot is on top. And we place the wood rough key into its slot on the camshaft, like so, and carefully tap it home. Then you'll hear when it's seated properly. You get the two new plate bolts. Put the plate on, and a little dob of Loctite. In goes the first bolt. In goes the bottom bolt. And we torque those two down to 10 Newton meters. There we go. That's the first one. And the second one. So they're torqued down. Now next, we're going to put these timing gears into the oven, 100 degrees. That'll expand them and should make them easier to fit onto the crankshaft and camshaft respectively. And not a particular note on this occasion, but this is the oil spray bar here. And when we're rebuilding engines, we'll always blow through that to make sure that the capillary that lies on behind this square head here is nice and free. The short side of the square head should be parallel with the timing cover. So in other words, the jet sort of sprays slightly as an angle on the top of the crankshaft timing gear. So that's the oil spray bar. Okay, so we've warmed this up to 100 degrees. I've marked, just to make life easy for me, the timing mark. There's a little 0 there. I've marked it in yellow paint. And we're going to go and offer it up to the crankshaft now. Okay, now I've left the car in 4th gear, but without the handbrake on, so I can move, by rolling the car forward, I can move the wood rough key up to the 12 o'clock position. So let's try again. There we go, that's it on. I'm just going to tap it gently with my copper mallet. And what I'm going to use is an old sleeve collar that I've cut down here, so it's going to be easy to get back off of the crankshaft, just to wind it on. So I'm just going to take it flush using this spacer here. And wind on the crankshaft timing gear. Now here's a collar that I've modified, an old collar that I've modified such that we can see when the wood rough key starts to appear through the timing gear. So I pop that on with the gap at the wood rough key, and continue to wind on the timing gear. And I can see the Woodruff key just coming proud now. There we go. Encourage our collar off. There we go. So that's what I've done there, that collar. And that there is our Woodruff key, now clearly proud of the timing gear. Now, the old collar here has a groove that's worn into where the felt seal, and now the neoprene seal, has sat for so many years. So we're actually replacing this with a brand new one, which is in the oven right now at 100 degrees. So I'm going to go and fetch the brand new collar. Okay, it's nicely at 100 degrees, so that should have expanded. And with luck and a fair wind, with a bit of grease, that's going to slide on very easily. There it is. We feel for where the Woodruff key is, and there it is. It's in location. And let's just wind that in. Now I'm going to leave it there for the time being, but it's not torqued up. We will come back to that later. So next is, of course, the camshaft timing gear. So what we do is we rotate this till the timing mark is pretty much vertical. Here the Woodruff key is pretty much vertical. And we'll put a little bit of grease on the boss of the camshaft and go and fetch the camshaft timing gear, which has been heated up to 100 degrees. So I've clearly marked my timing gear with yellow paint here, just so I don't lose track of it. We turn it round such that the Woodruff key is on top, and we vaguely offer it up. And now, you can't quite see, but I'm now looking down where the teeth mate with each other, and actually what we've got to do is get the crankshaft a bit more clockwise. So I'm going to wind the engine forward, there it goes. And looking down the teeth now, I'm still one tooth out. There, that's it. And now we've got to get the camshaft such that the Woodruff key is going to engage. So I'll just take it back off a bit. Let's try that. And we push on. Oh, look at that. It's gone straight on. Now, if you are less fortunate than I have been just there, and you haven't quite got some thread clear on the camshaft, whatever you do, do not be tempted to start hitting this with a heavy hammer, because what is most likely to happen is the back end of the camshaft is likely to pop the oil seal out at the rear. And so when you fire up your engine oil is going to start pouring down into your bell housing. So always make sure you've got a bit of thread here that the nut will catch, which is what we've done. Okay, on goes the cam nut. And we're going to do that up to 150 Newton meters. Do not be tempted to use a buzz gun on that. You are going to shear the end of the camshaft off. Maybe not today, but it will shear off in the next few weeks. Always use a proper torque wrench. Right, that's the torque wrench set. Let's wind it on, and of course do a double check that your timing marks have indeed lined up. You haven't made a mistake there. There it goes. 150 Newton meters. So now the timing cover can go back on, so we're just going to clean up the gasket areas. There we go. And particularly that sump gasket. Clean it off nicely. And I'm just going to go away now and fit the new neoprene seal into the timing cover. Right, so we're going to put the timing cover back. First thing we've got to do is just trim back the timing cover gasket a touch. So just locate the bottom edge using two of the timing cover bolts. And what you need to do is simply trim back that excess gasket there. So it's just a little bit proud of the face. So that's what we'll do. Yep, happy with that. And then we've got to make sure we get a good seal against that bottom sump gasket. So a gentle smear of blue Hylamar and just give it a light skin over the sump gasket that's exposed at the timing gear there. And likewise on the timing cover. There we go. And I would suggest, just to make life easy, just put a couple of dobs to locate the timing cover gasket, like that. And that'll just make life a bit easier when you offer it up. Right, we're going to leave that for 5 minutes. At that 5 minutes, I'm going to spend cleaning up the face of the cylinder head. I'll be using a safety razor to get most of it off, and then just running over with a hand bastard file just to make sure everything's clean. And then the cylinder head will be ready to go on. Right, I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay, we're ready now to offer up the timing cover. So I'll just put a bit of grease onto the crankshaft sleeve. Now the crankshaft sleeve has got a nice bevel on this edge, so therefore this neoprene seal should go over it nicely without having to be fiddled. So there we go, just put a bit of grease on there. We'll just gently stick the gasket in place. And offer it up. There we go, just like that. We'll put in the two bottom bolts first. Make sure the gasket's in position. So the first task is to do up the 4 sump bolts. And we torque those to 21 Newton meters. There we go. Now we're going to go back up top sides and torque down all the timing cover bolts to 10 Newton meters. Let's go back. Okay, so we just do them up gently by hand. And now torque each one of those bolts to 10 Newton meters. crankshaft bolt. Okay, make sure that you've marked up your 0 timing mark on the wheel and that the small tab that engages in the woodruff key slot is clearly proud of the rest of the surface. And this one actually has been bent over slightly. In other words, it's been badly positioned in the past. So I'm just going to knock that tab down so it does engage in the slot. And we rotate it round till it engages. There it is. Check that it hasn't moved, which it hasn't, that's good. So I put the handbrake back on and also got a chock under the front wheels, and we're going to torque this to 80 Newton meters. There it goes. Okay, recap where we are now. The new camshaft is in, the timing gears are all set. The timing cover's back on. I have actually reinstalled the fuel pump, and the distributor and oil pump drive is removed at present. Now, this being a high compression motorsport quality engine, what we're going to do is fit cylinder head studs instead of the original cylinder head bolts. The bolts are perfectly good for a standard motor, and we would always use those ordinarily, but in a high compression engine we want full accuracy of how we torque down that cylinder head. So that's why we fit cylinder head studs on a motorsport high compression engine. Now, we have already gone through each of the 10 cylinder head recess threads and cleaned them with the 7/16 tap. So we know we've got 10 clean threads, and we can go in and seat these smartly down to the shoulder. And whilst we're in this area of the engine, here is the original oil cooler sitting down the back here. Now, I have to confess, we would always remove this. Its failure mode is for the water matrix to corrode, and therefore you mix water and oil together in the system. In theory, the oil's running at a higher pressure, so it should just dump oil into the coolant, but of course there is always the risk that you're going to get coolant back into your oil and destroy your engine. So we would rather delete this than keep it. Okay, this is, as I say, Richard Iskandarian's camshaft, and with it we shall fit his beautiful set of followers. Okay, so we get our assembly grease, put a nice daub on the bottom of the follower and a gentle smear around the wall, and we drop it down into place. There we go. I'm sure I don't need to mention that, of course, with a new camshaft, always replace the followers. I don't care how old or new the camshaft was. If you put a new camshaft in, put in a new set of followers. Carefully wipe away any of the assembly grease off the face of the block, Over the years, we've had a few different gaskets come through the business, but L-ring are consistently high quality, and these are what we use for all our engines. So to get them out, we don't need this lock quite yet. Shall need that shortly, but critically right now, what I want is the two water pump top seals. Now the top seals are matched in thickness to the head gasket, so you always want to use the same set of top seals as comes with the head gasket. Okay, let's zoom in on that. And then we get the water pump seals, which are matched to the head gasket. And on goes the gasket, always fitted with the manufacturer's stamp facing top. There's the stamp and there's its part number. And we're now ready to fit the cylinder head. See you in a minute. And in we go. Probably best to use your fingertips to feel where the studs are. There it goes. Lovely. Okay, we'll just tuck that down and out of the way. So this is our motorsport cylinder head, so it's twin valve springs. The only reason you need twin valve springs is because of this camshaft, which is a high lift camshaft. You cannot fit a high lift camshaft with the single valve springs because they'll bind and ultimately break either your valve or the spring, but basically destroy your engine. So yeah, very nice head, cylinder head sitting here. So let's torque it down. So with your gasket set comes a nice sheet of paper which shows you the sequence of tightening the cylinder head nuts or bolts, and indeed the torques. So the first torque is down to 40 Newton meters. And then we go to the second torque, which we're told is 80 Newton meters. And then our final torque is to 90 Newton meters. push on the heater hose, back of the head, and nip up its Jubilee clip. We'll pop the temperature sender back in. Okay, on goes the manifold gasket. Once again, you should be able to see on the outside edge the manufacturer's ID boss. So it goes on this way round. And on goes the exhaust. We'll pop on copper slip onto every stud. To get it out of the way, we'll pop the oil cooler pipe back onto the head. Okay, that's the engine cooler pipe back on, so let's secure the manifold. Our customer has supplied us with brass nuts, and apparently that's what he wants to stick with. We would choose to go with Volvo's original spec steel nuts, but that's fine. Now, missing on the rearmost stud here is the P-clip that secures the heater transfer pipe, so we're going to reinstate that now. So on goes the P-clip. There we go. As you can see, we don't do the manifold nuts up with the strength of 10 men. It's just not necessary. Over a decade ago, I had a customer call me up, and apparently our manifold studs here were shearing. Turned out he was using about 3 times the torque that you were supposed to. So it's purely operator error, not our stud failure. He then went on to rally a Porsche 911 instead. And the inlet manifold. On with the throttle return springs. Just going to rotate this clip around to try and clear the vacuum hose there, like that. Now I see that this has the wrong reservoir top on it. The angle out of here is completely wrong, so we'll go and find the correct reservoir top. Okay, and on with the fan blade. Now in this instance, we're going to use our favoured 5-blade asymmetric because it's a motorsport engine. The stock motor's fine with the 4-blade original, but if you're winding up the power tool, this 5-blade asymmetric is a lovely unit. Fan blade on, this will all make life easy when setting up the valve clearances. And then we'll go back up the top of the engine just to set that alternator belt.
Just go. Okay. You were very wet spaniel. You are. Bye-bye.
We've just lost a load of film there, but what I was saying was we fitted tubular push rods here, which are stiffer than the standard solid rods, and these are a slightly different length to account for the different followers that we require when using the twin spring cylinder head. And then I knocked off each of the tappets as slack as they'll go before tightening up the 4 bolts on the rocker gear. Do not over tighten these 4 bolts, they're very easy to stretch. To give you an idea, I use a small ratchet like that, and that is how much force I use. Now this particular camshaft has a slightly asymmetric setup. The inlet valves need 0.35 of a millimetre, and the exhaust take 0.4. So we'll get those two set up. There's my 0.4. And that is my combination to create 0.35. There we go. Righty-ho, and anyone who's used to looking at my videos will know that we use the rule of 9. Rotate the engine. I'm going to make sure that we do 1 full revolution so everything's settled, so that's number 8 is just depressed. And I'm going to take it back till number 8 depresses again. That's number 5, and there goes 8, and it's back here. Right, so, because number 8 is down, number 1, we adjust. It's an exhaust, so we want 0.4. Bit tight. There we go. And 8 and 6 are down, therefore we adjust 1 and 3. Number 3 is an inlet, so we want 0.35.
I'm not sure that feeler's in properly.
There we go. The next pair to be depressed is 4-7. So watching, there goes number 4, and it's starting to rise. So we adjust number 5, which is an exhaust. So that's 0.4. Just a shade too tight there. And finally number 7, which is your inlet. Slack. Touch tight. We're there. After we've warmed this engine through for the first time, we'll actually go back in and recheck those valve settings. But for now, we're going to put the rocker cover back on. Okay. So this has bolts and natty little shaped washers. I don't approve of using bolts on the rocker cover. It kind of encourages people to over tighten them. However, they're here, we'll use them. Now, having put on a fresh gasket here, the cork has a tendency to settle for a while. So every time you do about the first couple of 100 miles, then just check those 4 screws. Just nip them down gently by hand, because you might find, probably will find, that otherwise it leaks oil out of the back here. Reinstate the vacuum hose. All that remains for me to do now is install the oil pump drive and the distributor, set the ignition timing, and put the radiator back in. So that'll be our next task. Okay, so we're now going to install the oil pump and dizzy drive down into the block at the bottom there. So first of all, what I want to do is turn this round till number 1 cylinder is about to fire. So looking just in here, that's number 1 valve. Number 2 is the inlet for number 1. So that is depressed at the moment, so it's drawing in fuel. As we turn it, it rises, and now we're on the compression stroke. So I'm just watching down on the pulley here now for when, there it is. There's the timing marks coming round, and that is top dead center, number 1 firing. So we now get the oil pump drive and insert it such that this broad sector here is on the left as I look at it, and the narrower sector is on the right, and we push it down to engage. Now, keeping my thumb on this, I'm going to turn the engine until you feel the bottom slot engage with the oil pump. I turn the crankshaft, there it is, it's just dropped in now. If I just jiggle fore and aft, I can make sure it's fully seated home, which it has. So that is now engaged. I can now put my dizzy back in. We just check that the gasket looks
Not particularly nice. We're going to replace that gasket. On goes our new gasket. Rotate the rotor until it engages in the dizzy drive, and in with the 2 bolts. So now we just turn the engine until we're 15 degrees before top dead center. There's 30, 20, and 15 degrees before top dead center. It's actually, looking at the rotor, number 4 that's firing. That's fine, it doesn't have to be number 1. Slacken off its pinch bolt. Switch the ignition on. And we'll rotate the dizzy clockwise until we see a little green lamp in the base plate come on. And it's coming round there. There, it's come on. I'm going to nip up the pinch bolt. Right, so what I'm going to do is now just turn the engine back a bit. It's now gone off, and now we're going to turn it, rotate the engine forward slowly until the lamp comes on. And double check how many degrees we're at. And we're actually at 19 there, which is a bit too far advanced, so I'm actually going to retard that a little bit again. Okay, to retard we turn anti-clockwise. There, snip it up a bit. Wind the engine back a touch, and then gently take it forward until the lamp comes on. There. And check our timing mark there, which says 16 degrees down on the pulley, which is perfect for me. I'm happy with that. We're going to go and put the radiator in now, which I shan't bore you with. I'll see you when I start up the engine.
Now, having promised you that I would show me starting up the P1800 engine, unfortunately we then had a rush job on that car to fit new road springs hours before delivery, and the owner was heading back to Switzerland. And so I really couldn't take the time out to video it properly. However, it started up beautifully. We had to settle down the idle a little bit, and then later we took it out for a test run, and having brought the car in at 12.5 seconds 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, we managed 10.6 seconds 0 to 100 kilometers an hour with my camshaft in it. Now that's a 15% improvement on your 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, which is pretty good by anyone's standard. So I'm really pleased about that. It was a nice job that went together well and proved results as well. And that was with a very slow gear change. Unfortunately, second to third took a lot of care if one was to avoid bouncing back out of the gear shift. So it could be better than 10.6 seconds, I'm fairly sure. That's it. That was a camshaft change in situ. It worked well. I apologise for having skipped over removing the fuel pump and the dizzy drive, because of course those are fairly essential. Well, that's it. It's a swelteringly humid summer's day here in England. Not mind complaining, it's rare to have such heat. Thank you for watching.